Live.
Perfect.
I'll let you know when we're there. Okay, and we are live. So,
Woo!
welcome everyone. I am here with a fellow podcaster, also a student of the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. And I think your podcast is part of the uh, Actuarial Science Club at University of Nebraska. Is that correct?
It is, yeah.
Okay. This is Matt Ringler, and thanks for joining, Matt.
Yeah, well, I'm really happy to be here today and provide some insights, I guess. So
I
this will
like
be
it.
fun.
Yes, you will. I like your background too. You got I
The
can't.
College of Business
Oh, call it. There you
for
go. At
Nebraska.
at
So
University of Nebraska. Perfect.
exactly.
For all we know, you're just sitting out there right now.
Oh, I wish. It's
Yeah.
raining out there today. It's not
Oh, okay.
sunny, so
Looks like I was gonna say it looks like a nice day in that picture. So let's just start out with like a little bit of background about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
for sure. Sounds great. So a little bit about me. So I was born in New York, but I've actually spent most of my life in Texas. So I got the North and South covered at this point and
Nice,
went to
nice.
school in the Midwest. So I got basically everything almost covered except for the coasts. But who knows? We'll get there someday,
There you
maybe.
go.
I don't know. But growing up, I've always loved sports. Baseball and football being my two favorite. Really loved playing those, and I actually was an athletic trainer for both those sports, which I'll get into here in a little bit.
Oh, really nice.
Yeah, so I love that as well. And so before actuarial science, I actually wanted to pursue something within the medical field. So more specifically, I wanted to be an anesthesiologist or an orthopedic surgeon because I knew I always loved helping people and I loved math. So I knew anesthesiology had at least something to do with math.
Yep.
And orthopedic surgery, I figured would eventually have something to do with math, with like sports or something of that nature. But I kind of like, it was like, I'll figure it out when I get there, you know? So those were the big things that I were kind of shooting for in high school. And throughout my time in high school, I took a bunch of classes. Like I said before, I was an athletic trainer for multiple sports, aside from just football and baseball. So I loved having the ability to kind of like actually like immerse myself within the health space. On like the care side as opposed to the actuarial side,
Right.
which again we'll get into a little bit later. But throughout high school, those are my main things. I wanted to be an orthopedic surgeon or an anesthesiologist.
Yep.
And actuarial science, I didn't even know about until really my senior year.
And
And oh yeah, go ahead.
well, that's actually that was kind of the first thing I was going to ask you is what led you to choose an actuarial science major? Because for myself, I majored in math, and then I really didn't know about the profession until like my senior year, which is then when I decided to go into it. I know it's like a little more well known now. I mean, it's not, I wouldn't say well known, but more than it was even 13. Well, how many years ago did I graduate? I'm trying to think now. 13 years ago, yeah, is when I graduated
Yeah.
from undergrad. So, yeah, I'm just curious what led to that.
Yeah. So, like I said, I didn't even really find out about the whole idea of actuarial science until my senior year in high school. So, actually, believe it or not, so like I said, I was born in New York, so I'm a huge New York Giants fan. Grew up going to their spring training camp, all that stuff. We got
Nice.
Eli Manning's rookie signature
Oh,
one
that's
year
cool.
whenever he was first there. So I'm New York Giants through and through. But I actually owe finding out about actuarial science to the Dallas Cowboys, which I'm not too excited to admit
Wow. Let's hear this
because
story.
yeah, exactly, right. So, me and my friend, it was the summer before my senior year. We were going to a Dallas Cowboys pregame. At that point, I kind of knew I didn't really want to pursue the medical field because I had an internship the previous summer where I was like, I had an opportunity to shadow a physical therapist, and I was like, I don't really want to go to school for 12 to
Was
13 years.
Oh, I was gonna. Okay, yeah. That I was gonna say that's a big deterrent. I was about to ask, was it
Oh
the
yeah.
blood or was it the like being around sick people?
No, like I loved all that, but I was just
Okay.
like I don't want to go to school for 13 years and like, have some like lulls and like, some days where I kind of feel
Yeah.
like it'd be more exciting where it could be.
Well, I was gonna
But yeah.
say because like my dad's a doctor, and
Really? Okay.
when I was a kid, I always told people I want to be a doctor like my dad.
Yeah.
And then as I started getting older, and I went into a hospital setting and everything, I'm like I didn't like it. I'm like I get
It's just
I get
something about it.
well, for me, I just get like kind of queasy around like
Okay.
if I get hurt, usually I don't. even mind it that much. I don't mind the pain, except for when
Right.
I look at the blood. I'm
And
like,
you're like, whoa.
okay, can't look at that. So anyway, that's just a little side note. But yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, so like I kind of like a little bit of the same thing. It's just I didn't really like fall in love with it from the way I really thought I would whenever I was
Yeah.
first exposed to it. So whenever we were going to a Dallas Cowboys preseason game, so I was like, I'm not gonna pass that up, even though it is the Cowboys. I gotta go check it out, go check out Jerry World and all that fun stuff. So we went there, and my friend's dad, and I were talking. He's like, "Hey, what do you got planned for the future? It's senior year. What colleges you looking at?" And I was kind of telling him like, I don't really know right now. I don't really want to go medical anymore, but taking a few math classes this semester, so that's been pretty fun. And he said, "Well, if you like math, you should really look into actuarial science." I'm like, "Okay, that sounds interesting. I'll look into it." And upon doing a little bit more research, I saw the like the actual practical applications of what you can do within the
Yep.
field. I'm like, "Oh my god, this is awesome! Like I can still go in within the medical field and the health insurance side of things and still help people through that. But instead of now actually going in and being on the front line of things, I can actually be working a little bit behind the scenes
Yeah,
and kind of go with
and
that."
you don't have to be in school for like 20 years.
Exactly. But we do have to take the exam, so I
That's
guess
I
that
know
was the big
that's the
trade-off.
thing. Yeah, we're not going to talk about. No, we
Yeah,
will. We
we'll
will.
worry about that later.
Yeah, exactly. But no,
But
that's
yeah,
cool. So so then that kind of led to that choice, and then you chose
exactly.
University of Nebraska after like looking at some programs, or
Oh yeah,
okay,
exactly. So I applied to University of Texas, A&M, Oklahoma State University, OU. Oh gosh, and a few others that I'm leaving out as well. That I'm not remembering at the top of my head. But yeah, I applied to all of them, got into all of them, but Nebraska won out because it is a certified
yeah,
school of the
yeah. I was
Center of
gonna say
Actuarial
they have a
Excellence.
good actuarial science program.
Yeah.
Fun little side note. I actually, my freshman year of high school, I was semi homeschooled. It was like an
Okay.
online program, but it was through the University of Nebraska-Lincoln. I don't know,
Really?
yeah, and
Okay.
I don't know if they still have this, but back when I was in high school, which was a while ago, it was like an online high school program.
Yeah.
So, and it's weird to think about now because even in the time since I was a freshman of high school till now, I mean, the amount the internet has changed is
Oh
drastic.
my
Like I actually
gosh.
had to mail in my assignments, which like,
Oh
uh,
my gosh.
which is so bizarre. But like, I sound like just like a super old guy now, but maybe I am.
Well,
But
just the amount of like way it's evolved in the past year due to everything is
oh
even
yeah,
crazier like
I
that
know
too.
it's
Like,
crazy. Like a lot of the stuff I could read online and everything, but they didn't have a good way to submit assignments. So like literally, I would do my
yeah.
assignments and then I would mail them in, and then they would mail back feedback.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and I went to a public high school my sophomore through senior year, so I only did that
Yeah.
1 year. But when I saw University of Nebraska-Lincoln, I'm like, wow, this is a blast from the past. So
There we go. That's awesome.
yeah, but no, I wanted to ask you like for a lot of people watching that are curious about actuarial science programs, and I'm actually curious myself. I want to teach actuarial science, and I have done quite a bit of research, but from a student's perspective, like what's a 4 year program look like as you go through it? Like what you might take each year while you're in the actual. I know it could be different per school, but
Of
in
course.
general, what's it like for you?
Yeah. So specifically at Nebraska, I mean, because it is the certified center of actuarial excellence, so you have all those opportunities to take all these classes that will prepare you for different exams. So one of the cool things about your experience or your 4 year degree is it's going to really vary person to person depending on what you want to experience within
Yeah,
that.
yeah,
So, but for me personally, the first 2 semesters was mainly just kind of knocking out your gen eds, your
yep.
calculus, a little bit of accounting, some economics, all that fun stuff. And then your sophomore years when you kind of start to trickle into some of those actuarial science courses that you really kind of get like a flavor of like the material they have to offer.
Hmm.
So that's when you start to get those classes for exam FM or financial mathematics. In junior years, kind of when we had our preparation or our classes for exam probability. But alongside those classes, you also have some insurance application classes, which have been really interesting to take, some upper level finance courses that help satisfy those VEE requirements as
That's
well.
nice. Yeah.
And yeah, it's like you also have a lot of flexibility in terms of like the minors that you want to choose too. Because at Nebraska, the actuarial science degree is actually offered both through the arts and sciences and the College of Business. I am a College of Business student, and then one of the best parts about that is the versatility of the major itself and how much I guess layover it has with other majors as well. Because it's super easy if you wanted to, you can get a double major in actuarial science and finance, or if you wanted, you could even take a few other classes and get a bunch of other minors in like finance, statistics, and I even was pondering getting a business law minor at one point because
Oh,
I
that's
actually have
cool.
time in my schedule.
Yeah, because
So
I
it really just
noticed you're
varies.
getting your minor in math. Is that correct? Along with it,
Correct.
which I mean that makes a lot of sense. There's
Exactly
huge
right.
overlap with that, but and then yeah, being in the College of Business, like you said, I think that's super beneficial.
Oh
Having
yes.
that, and that's interesting. That I was going to ask you about that because
Yeah.
you get to take a variety of like insurance type courses along
Exactly.
with courses that are geared toward the exams. Because I feel like
Exactly.
with actuarial science, there's learning the exam stuff, and then when
Yep.
you're actually working, as I'm sure you've experienced in your internship, there's a lot of stuff that's different than what you do in the
Yes.
exam, even though you may use some of the exam stuff.
Exactly.
So it's nice that you get kind of a breadth of knowledge with some basic insurance courses and things like that.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah. And that's one of the best parts about it. And there's actually a whole other side that a lot of people don't even talk about with the education aspect and experience within a 4-year degree is the
right,
professional development opportunities that come along with it.
definitely.
Specifically at Nebraska, I mean, the career fair happens every year. You meet, I think we bring in around anywhere from 27 to 30 plus in like, very heavily and well respected actuarial recruiters.
Yep.
And we also have this club called Gamma Iota Sigma, which is a professional development opportunity on campus in terms of like it's actually a fraternity that actually teaches students about risk management and insurance as opposed to just actuarial science as a
Oh,
whole.
wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And also the Actuarial Science Club, which is my big thing, and I started the podcast for
Yep.
that. And there's just unlimited opportunities in terms of what you can actually do outside of the classes
Yeah.
at any university, which is great. So that's one thing that I always like to pass on to students is don't just think about the classes that you're going to be offered there as well. Think about the other stuff that's going to be, that you're really there for to get a job,
Definitely.
that'll help
Yeah.
you get a job and create those connections along the way.
Yeah, that's it's nice having those career events, even just like once you start making those connections with
Oh
people, with
yeah,
companies, because
exactly.
I mean, as you've probably found, like maybe 70 to 80% of getting a job is kind of knowing someone or just
Yep,
having that initial connection. Even if it's like
it is.
you talk to them for 1 hour or half an hour or whatever it is, it's like and someone's going through a stack of resumes, everything might look the same until it's like, oh yeah, I met this person. Like, okay,
Exactly.
so
Yeah.
that's really
It really
nice.
just all depends on like, who you meet and what experiences you get throughout
Yeah,
that whole entire thing. So,
definitely. So what do you feel like? Because you're a senior now. What
correct.
has been your hardest course up through this program? I just throw one out there. I'm sure you had a lot of hard courses, but
So this was probably one of the toughest questions to kind of to pinpoint an answer to because there's a lot of hard courses that we have to take throughout our 4-year degree. But I pinned it down to two because
okay.
it's a sequence of classes that you have to take. So it's Acts 4, it's labeled as Acts 470 and Acts 471 in Nebraska. And what that boils down to is Life Contingencies 1 and Life Contingencies 2. So the two
So
classes that
Ltam.
help prepare you for LTAM.
Oh
Yep.
yeah.
So the
Yep.
hardest exam from what I've heard. So
Yep.
definitely hands down those two classes they had me. Those were easily like the ones where I had to put expend the most effort because it's tough material and you got to learn it.
That was going to be my guess if I had to guess,
Yep.
because I didn't go through an actuarial program, but I had to study for the exams, of course. So I studied for that one,
Oh
and
yeah.
that was a doozy.
Oh,
That
so I've
one,
heard.
yeah. That's a tough one. I'm, what's really interesting about the exams is I feel like that was probably the hardest one for me.
Okay.
Not just probably, it was the hardest one for me. And yet I passed that one first try, and FM, which was probably the easy. quote unquote easiest one for me.
Easiest, right?
Um, I actually took 3 tries on that, which is crazy.
Really?
But and even to this day, I'm like, I feel like I'm the most of an expert in that material as opposed to the other exams. Um,
Exactly.
and I think the reason is it was early on in the process, and I
Yes.
didn't know how much I truly needed to study for these things. And so I think I just didn't study enough. I mean, I was close to passing both the times that I failed. I got like a 5.
Oh
But
no, that's the worst feeling too.
which is the worst, but it it's just weird to think back on because I'm like LTAM was so much harder for me, but I also studied like an exponential amount more than, well, maybe not exponential, maybe I shouldn't use that word, but more. 'Cause
A
we
lot
got
more.
we got a math audience here. I shouldn't use the word
Exactly, right?
exponential. I definitely studied more. So yeah, but so yeah, anyway, it doesn't surprise me. So those classes you took, and this kind of gets me to my next question, which is, it sounds like you haven't taken that particular exam yet. Do you feel like
Correct.
as you went through these classes, were you kind of like, okay, I'm ready to take the exam, or does it require a significant amount more study on your own outside of these classes?
Yeah. So, from my experience, what I've seen, it really kind of depends on person to person. But typically, what it is the classes will give you a really, really good background information and kind of like a flavor of the material of what to expect for that
Mm-hmm.
specific exam. But in order to really be successful and really go ahead and become as familiar with the material as you possibly can be, you need to put in that time outside of the classroom to study. So I will say, because I've passed 2 exams at this point, I have both FM and P,
Okay.
and I took the classes here at Nebraska. And as soon as I was done with those 2 classes, I went and studied for the exam
Okay, that's what I figured.
using
Yeah.
coaching actuaries after that. So I think for me especially, I needed to put in that extra time to really like just pound the material and just really know it really well so I can really make sure that I can pass those exams. But I really do think the classes are great flavor. But it's not the end all be all. You need to
Yep.
make sure you put in the practice in terms of practice problems, and if some concept was a little iffy in class, it's going to show up again on the exam, and you cannot be iffy on it on the
Yes.
exam
Oh
because
yeah.
they will most likely test that part that you don't know because
Exactly.
that's the hardest part.
That's what they always
So,
do.
exactly right. So
Yep.
that's just what the SOA and the CAS is good at. Is they're
Yep.
good at pinpointing those little discrepancies across students, but it prepares you extremely well for the field.
Yeah.
So
No, that's nice though. Like I was wondering because like I said, I didn't go through an actuarial program, but what's interesting is I think you're aware, and probably some of my audience is aware, that I worked as an actuary for a while. I'm still working as an actuary as well, but I decided to go back to school to get my master's to get a good theoretical background in statistics,
exactly,
in order to be able to go teach actuarial science. But in my master's, I've taken a couple actuarial courses along the way, part for a couple reasons. One, to review the material. Two, just to see how an actuarial course is taught. And three, because I had taken the exams before, I'm like, well, this is a way to have a little lighter load in terms of homework.
indeed.
So there was multiple reasons, but having said that, going through it, I'm like, okay, I can see where this helps prepare you really well, but you still have to do a ton of study outside of this. It's like you get a good
Exactly.
idea of the material, but there's still so much you got to do. So
Exactly. It's a
yeah,
good flavor, but you got to put in the work outside of that.
definitely. So, um, and while you've been in school, this is like a 4 year degree program. Sounds like you have an actuarial club at the university. This is kind of how you started the podcast. I was curious kind of how that got going.
Yeah, for sure. So it was through the Actuarial Science Club. So I guess that's a spoiler alert. I don't really know if it's a spoiler at this point, but so yeah, it was started through that. And
Yep.
so throughout my time within the 4 years at Nebraska, I've held numerous positions throughout the College of Business and also the Actuarial Science Club. So 2 main positions being the vice president and also the president of the club.
Yep.
So I actually took on the role of president beginning December 2019, which, as we all found out later, was a little bit of an interesting year.
Yep.
So with some interesting challenges.
Definitely.
So the podcast actually got started through that. So one of the main responsibilities for the club on campus is to provide professional development opportunities for our students, whether that be in their technical capabilities or just networking with new employers coming in on campus and sharing about their companies. So what was it? It was like the first week in March, we had our first job shadow opportunity with
Yep.
Pacific Life in Omaha. And literally the week after, that's when everything
That's
was
when it all
canceled.
hit.
Like the
Yep.
NBA, whenever the
Oh yeah.
NBA canceled their season, then you
That's
knew like, okay,
That's how I
this is
remember.
serious.
That's how I remember the pandemic really starting. Was that one game? It might have been the Oklahoma City Thunder game.
Yes,
It
I
was.
think that
Was
was
that the
it.
one where they evacuated the whole stadium?
I think so.
Because
I don't remember specifically, but I
it,
just remember OKC was like one of those
yeah,
teams.
it was one of those games where they evacuated the stadium. That's like to me in my head when the pandemic started. Even though
Yep,
like I think it was maybe a month or a month and a half before that is when I really started hearing about COVID.
exactly.
But it didn't like hit home until
Didn't
like
hit.
that.
Yeah.
It was like, oh, damn, this is real. But it
Exactly.
was when I saw
Like
that
whenever
video.
that
But
actually happened, you're like, oh wow, okay, maybe it's not gonna just disappear and go away,
yeah, yeah,
So, but exactly kind of like that. So like that's when it hit us too, was whenever everything officially started getting canceled, and that at that point Nebraska had come out and said, okay, we're gonna cancel classes for the rest of this week. You guys have this week off. The next week was our spring break, so we already had that off. So we had
yep,
the 2 weeks, and then whenever everyone was coming back, they said, okay, we're gonna just make this all online now. And obviously, all of our events for the Actuarial Science Club were in person. So no more events for the
yep.
rest of the semester, basically, at that point.
So that at that
So
point you
we
kind of had to figure out what to do.
Oh yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. So like, and this was my first term as president, because we do it
yeah,
by semester. You get 2 semesters. So I was like, oh, okay, there goes the
yep.
first half of my first term. So that's cool. But we actually, so it was actually a really great opportunity though to kind of like bounce back and like just evaluate what you can do in these situations. And what I did and what some of my executive team members did as well is we met with the director of the actuarial science program, which is Sue Votz. She's helped me out so much. And we also met with Heather Clemens, who's the assistant director, and she's helped me out so much as well. So shout out to Sue and Heather. They've been great
Nice.
throughout my
That's
whole
awesome.
entire process. But we were just kind of bouncing ideas off of each other on what we could do to really still facilitate the success of our students within the program and the department itself. And I jokingly just said, hey, everyone's starting a podcast. Why don't we do that? And they both fell in love with the idea. And I was like, oh, okay, we're actually going to do this. Okay, cool. I'm going to start finding some people and we'll circle back in about a week or two and see how it goes. And they connected me with some wonderful alumni that we've had come and present in the club before in the past. And we just kind of started rolling from there. So I think the first three were all Nebraska alumni, and then from there we started branching out and getting some people that weren't from Nebraska. At some point, the cast got really involved, and we were actually able to interview the CEO of the Casualty Actuary
Nice.
Society, the past president of the Casualty Actuary Society, and the current president of the Casualty Actuary Society. And we've had so many. We had Joe Wurzberger from the Society of
Yep.
Actuaries come on. He's the head of product innovation and development right now at the SOA. Like just all these different perspectives that we were able to bring for our students and just get them all these, wonderful like insights that they wouldn't really normally have the opportunity to get, considering that all these people are either in Illinois, New York, California, like all over the place. And now we were able to kind of bring them all in on a podcast and just, condense it into like a 20 to 50 minute, depending
Yep.
on the length of the conversation, like into a conversation,
No,
basically.
isn't that
So,
nice though? Like you and I were
yeah,
just talking about this before we started this, but doing a podcast in this kind of a way where it's like you could talk to anyone as opposed to an
yeah,
in-person. There are advantages to in-person. I do feel like you
exactly.
get a nice conversation that way. You can
You get a
have
nice
like
rapport going and
yeah,
all
and the
that stuff.
recording
Yeah,
equipment is all there. Like you don't have as many technical glitches probably, but you also can't get the breadth of experience, that way. So
exactly.
that's really nice. And I'm just curious what you found over time with doing this podcast. It's probably kind of gotten you out there too to meet a lot of people in terms of like professionally, just for yourself. I know it's an advantage for the students, obviously,
Of
but just for
course, right.
yourself, I'm just
Yeah.
curious. Like, have you felt it's been pretty advantageous?
Oh my gosh, yes. The I always like to joke around about this with my friend, but my LinkedIn is like from if you compare it from like a year ago to now, I mean, it's crazy in terms of all the people that I was able to
Yeah.
connect with throughout just facilitating conversations with individuals. Because I didn't just share it with our student population, I shared it on LinkedIn and just whoever wanted to really listen into it. So yeah, I mean, I was able to. I mean, that's how I met John Forrester.
That's
In the virtual happy
which
hour,
is
and
how you and I met.
exactly, and then that's how you and I met. Like,
Yeah.
it's crazy to
Yeah.
see just how like one little
Shout out
thing.
to John for that. Yeah.
Exactly.
'Cause that
Yeah. Shout out to John for White Claw
Yeah,
Wednesdays.
exactly. Because I mean, that's how it's funny because that's how he discovered you, and that's how I think that's how him and I connected as well, is through this YouTube. So
Yeah,
it's like, yeah, because I found the same thing where doing
it's
this
awesome.
YouTube, I kind of started for Actuarial Toolkit, which you and I will talk about on your podcast
Sweet.
when I'm on your podcast. But um, I started because I was like, well, I kind of want to have a community of actuaries where I can like talk about this product, but this is more turned into me talking to like actuaries, students, like all sorts of people, and
Exactly.
my whole actuarial toolkit thing, even though I still am working on it, it kind of went on the back burner as I was in grad school, and it's going to come more to the forefront, which I will tell you more about when I'm on your podcast. But
There we go.
um,
So stay tuned then.
stay tuned. So anyone listening, join Matt's podcast. What day are we doing that again? April 16th, I want to
Gosh,
say.
April 16th we record. It'll probably be available shortly after that.
Oh, okay, yeah. So it'll be available sometime in April, probably.
Exactly.
But where was I going? Oh, I was just. I mean, my point was like it's kind of amazing the people that you end up meeting through your
Yeah.
YouTube, and now it's funny because like sometimes I use my YouTube as a way of like, for example, the job I have now. I'm
Hmm.
working as a part-time consulting actuary while I'm in school, and when I first introduced myself to Kyle, shout out to Kyle. I don't know if Kyle's watching or not, but um, when I first introduced myself, I kind of wrote this paragraph, and then I was like, and if you're curious, like who I am, I just posted a link to a YouTube. Because I'm
Right.
like, this is a good way for someone to meet me, like see me on video. So now I
Exactly.
like use my YouTubes as a way of like, if I'm trying to get a
It's like a
job
legal
or something like,
introduction
it's
in
an
a way.
introduction, exactly,
Yeah.
exactly. So
Like it's perfect because
yeah,
you already have interviewed all these individuals, and it's even better whenever that person already knows someone you've interviewed, and you're
yeah,
like, oh,
yeah,
they've done this, and they already know this person, and
exactly.
the wheels start turning, and all the connections start flying, and you're like, oh
It
my
does.
gosh, like it's just crazy how like
Yeah.
just one little thing like a podcast or a YouTube channel can really just put you out there and just get you so much more involved within the community of
Yeah,
actuaries.
it's really cool. That's what
Yeah.
I've loved about it. So, um, yeah, and it's funny looking back on the first YouTube I've posted. I just keep it up there just for memory's sake. Like my YouTube still need a lot of improvement, but even looking, I think it was 2.5 years ago when I posted my first YouTube. I'm like, that was so terrible, but like, I want to keep.
Same with my
I,
first podcast.
I want to keep it
I
up
still
there
look
because
back.
yeah. I mean, like I said, I still need to improve a lot. I always see things I need to improve on, but yeah, it's always nice to see a little improvement over time. So,
Exactly.
but yeah, I also wanted to touch on internships because through this
Of
four
course.
years, you got an internship at Humana. Um, what was that process like? And also, second part to the question is, how competitive is it nowadays getting internships,
Yeah.
knowing that there's so many actuarial programs that have popped up even in the last like 10 to 20 years?
Yeah, it's crazy. So to answer, I guess the first part of your question, the kind of work that I've done at Humana and all that fun stuff. So I actually had an opportunity to have like an externship, so to say, my freshman year, to
Okay.
where I shadowed actuaries in Kentucky for about a week. My sophomore year, I actually had the opportunity for the full-time internship for 12 weeks, worked 40 hours a week. I was on the senior products team for the Medicare Part D side of things, and that
Nice.
was really exciting, and I loved that
I
experience.
worked on some
Uh,
Medicare Part D.
Hey, there we
Yeah,
go. So we got
yeah,
that in common. I like that. I
yeah.
like that.
I worked
I
at
love.
when I worked at CVS, I did a lot of Med D stuff. So yeah,
Nice.
yeah.
Okay, cool. So yeah, actually, I worked on a project on Medicare Part D in my sophomore year,
Okay, nice.
and I loved that team. That was so fun to because that was when oh gosh, that was when Trump came out with that whole thing about how he wanted to bring the rebates to point of sale. But like whenever he finally decided to like not bring it to point of
Yep.
sale, oh, I'm starting to get a little. Oh, there we go. Sorry about that. If it just cut out a little bit, but
It's fine. It's just like it chopped out just barely for a second.
yeah, no, I saw it on mine. I was like, oh, that's not good,
Yeah.
because everything went black. I was like, oh.
Uh-oh.
But so on in terms of that, it's just so cool because like what I wanted to go with that example is you're on in healthcare, and healthcare is always changing. And I was on the forefront of actually kind of seeing some of these
Yeah, because
changes that were
Trump
implemented.
had a lot of stuff with drug pricing going on.
Yeah.
And so yeah, that's what that would have been. So your sophomore year
Yep.
was a couple years ago, and I think like that's when it
Yeah.
started getting big. So yeah.
Exactly. So
Yep.
I was right on the forefront of that. And then this past year, I was on the reserving team whenever COVID hit. so,
Okay.
so
Yep.
I'm getting like all these, really crazy, but like really great experiences in
Yep.
terms of like my own learn. Not obviously not this past year was not a great experience for anyone by any means whatsoever. But in terms of like learning and actually getting exposed to all these different things that could happen within the healthcare space, I mean, oh my gosh,
Yeah.
this is the time to be in it right now.
Yeah,
you
no, I
know?
know. I mean, this is like, I mean, in the ASA modules, when you're working on your ASA, there's the whole series of module FAP
Yeah.
modules you do at the end. They talk a lot about external factors, and this is like your
Hmm.
real life experience of external
Oh
factors, that
yes.
affect your actuarial work. So, um, yeah, especially in the healthcare space. I mean, I think any actuary is going to experience it, but I would say probably more than any space in healthcare, because I mean
Oh
it's
yeah.
always in the forefront of politics. That's for sure. So,
Exactly. And it's
yep,
always changing, and even telemedicine now is coming up, and that's going to change the way we do things. And even
definitely.
outside of the whole politics, telemedicine's coming, and that's going to bring forth, like,
Yeah,
there's just so many external factors that like to consider within that field. It's crazy.
yeah,
And it always keeps you on your toes, which I love. That's the thing that drove me to the health insurance sphere, was it
definitely.
always keeps you on your toes.
And did you? I'm get like a lot of people end up kind of choosing their route based on the first job they get. So you got a job at Humana as an intern, and so
Correct.
this is probably healthcare is probably kind of the route you want to go into. I'm guessing.
Yeah, so actually, it kind of ties into what I wanted to do in high school, as I still wanted to find a way
That's a
to
good point.
actually,
Yeah, you brought that
yeah,
up.
to
Yeah.
stay in the medical realm of things.
Yep.
So, and health insurance was the best way to do that, really, and stay
Yeah.
involved within the health insurance field. So, yeah, I mean, it
Yeah,
just
that's
the
a good
stars
point.
aligned.
Yeah, I guess it aligned with your original passion. That's cool cuz
Exactly.
yeah, for me I didn't really have like a preference necessarily going into it. It's just that my first job through a series of connections is kind of how I got my first job, but
Yeah,
I mean it happened to be in healthcare. So but I am biased towards healthcare now that I've been in it. So
exactly, right?
probably property casualty people would be biased toward that, but um,
Exactly.
yeah. All right, we're getting close to the end here, so I wanted to ask you a few other questions to top it
Of
off.
course.
But just curious, it's always fun to ask people that are in the actuarial science profession what their hobbies are outside of math, outside of actuarial science. You already alluded to that at the beginning, but let's go with your top three hobbies outside of school and work.
Okay, top three hobbies. So I already said watching sports. I won't include that.
All right,
So my top three are cooking. I've always loved cooking. Italian and Tex-Mex foods being my two favorite to cook.
nice, nice.
Another one aside from that, working out. I love staying in. I'm a gym rat, so I love staying
That's
in the gym.
that's me. That's me as
There
well.
we go. We have that in common.
Yep,
Oh, that's my favorite thing to do in the morning. Just wake up, go to the gym, get blood pumping, get the
nice.
day going. It's awesome.
I
And
get
then oh
I
yeah, go
get
ahead.
angry if I can't go to the gym like a few days in a row. I start getting in like a really bad mood, and like
Yeah,
yeah,
it changes your mood. Like it actually does.
it
It's kind of
does.
crazy.
Yeah, and then like I start getting mad, like whether it's school or work or other things that's going on in my life. I start like blaming all those things, like it's getting in the way of my health.
Exactly, right?
But yeah, yeah. So I know what you mean. Go ahead.
Yep. And then the last, but most certainly not least, I've been doing Duolingo for almost 2.5 years now. I have like an 800, 900 day streak on that,
I
and
don't even
I've
know.
been
I
learning
don't know
Spanish.
what's. Oh, it's like to learn a language.
Yeah, to learn a language.
Ah,
So it's a
nice.
free app that you can use to learn a language. And I took Spanish in high school.
Okay.
I've always wanted to continue it.
Good for
Unfortunately, I
you.
haven't had
Nice.
time to, continue the education at Nebraska. So I take like 15, 20 minutes every morning to just kind of go through some Spanish lessons through the
Nice.
Duolingo app. So that's been really fun.
Good for you. That's awesome.
Thank you.
So favorite, other than of course my YouTube and your podcast, let's go with your top favorite podcast.
Favorite podcast has to be Conan O'Brien Needs a Friend. I love Conan on late night,
Nice.
so I,
I've
I always
actually,
enjoy his episodes.
I have not even, I love Conan, but I've never even
Yeah,
listened to his podcast.
you should. It's pretty good. He brings on a bunch of people and they talk about literally everything.
Nice.
It's hilarious, and it's also really kind of topical too, which is really nice. So it's awesome. I love it.
That's awesome. And final question is your favorite mathematics or statistics theorem, or you could even go to the actuarial science space if you want, and any theorem that applies to that.
Okay, so I didn't really have a theorem or a fact for this, but I do have a joke, if that
Okay, let's
helps.
hear. Jokes
So,
are.
because my brother
I,
told me this the other day,
I
so I
always
gotta.
I actually have a thing with the math class that I teach, and
Okay.
I give extra credit for math jokes. So I do enjoy a good math joke.
Okay, so let's see if you heard this one. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. What is the derivative of a cow?
The derivative of a cow. Let's think about it. It's gonna be something. I'm thinking about slopes and cows and how they're related. Instantaneous rate of change cow. Uh, a limit. I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm rib.
Oh my god. That, that is a good one.
It's a good
Prime
one. He
rib.
got me on that one, but it's
I'm
just
gonna.
one of those things where you're like, oh my gosh.
I'll tell that one to my class next
There
week.
you go. Extra credit.
Extra credit for that one. That's a good one, Matt. I like it. Hey, I appreciate you coming on, and if you guys have any questions for Matt, feel free to type it in the chat. I actually should have been watching. Let me check. I don't think we didn't have any questions up till now. So if you have any
There we
questions,
go.
feel free to type it in the chat, and also feel free to join Matt's podcast, or listen to Matt's podcast once it comes out in April. So I will be on that, and other than that, I appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, this has been awesome. I love going on, jumping on podcasts, and talking with another podcaster. It's always a fun time.
It's a
So,
lot of fun. I really enjoyed it.
me too. Me too.
And we will see you guys all next time.